Hello, I'm James from Borussia Dortmund English, and this is the Echte Liebe podcast. I'd like to welcome you all. If you are a new listener here, then thank you for joining us, and if you are a regular listener, then welcome back. I don't get to see how many regular or returning listeners we get because the analytics just aren't that detailed, but since the start of the podcast, the overall numbers do seem to steadily be rising. So hopefully, we're doing something right. In today's show, I want to take an in-depth look at our current squad and to see what a best case scenario would look like, and what a worst case scenario could be as we get ever closer to the start of the new Bundesliga season. The reason I'm doing this is because the transfer activity has been very un-BVB-like so far this summer. In contrast, one of our closest rivals, in both footballing terms and in terms of position in the table, have so far had a summer to remember and are making waves with some of their signings. It can be hard to watch, but when things are put into perspective, I honestly believe that we don't have all that much to worry about. If we cast our minds back to the start of last season, or the transfer window more specifically, we made some big signings that I think each one has been a success so far. You've got Julian Ryerson, Salih Özcan, Nico Schlotterbeck, Karim Adeyemi and Sebastian Haller. They're all names that became an integral part of the starting 11 or the main squad last season. We actually had a deficit in the budget after those signings where we spent roughly €25 million more than we bought in, and that was after the sale of Erling Haaland to Manchester City. That won't have gone unnoticed, and I'm sure that would have been a factor regarding the tentative approach this off-season. You'll of course then say, what about the $100 million we've just received for Jude? And you'd be correct. But by spending $30 million on Felix Nemecha and then adding the deficit from last season, we may realistically only have around €45 million left, and that's to fill the gaps in the current squad. In today's market, that's one first-team player, and that's not a world-class one. Or it could be 2 or 3 lesser-known players that we would be signing as squad players with a view to develop. That's where we are right now. And that's why I don't see any blockbuster signings in the near future. When we compare our activity to that of RB Leipzig, one could easily say that they clearly have more ambition than us, and that they are signing players that would have been a great fit for ourselves, and to a degree, those comments could all hold some truth. They're signing young players with a very high ceiling, but they need to. They've just had the core of their squad ripped from them. They've lost Gvardiol, Lima, Spoloi and Christopher Nkunku. That's the same as us losing the most important 4 players that we'd signed last summer in one go. Some could argue it's even worse and more impactful than that. Leipzig are doing what they are doing not because they have more ambition than us, and not because they have a bigger draw, but because, quite simply, they have to. They've done a fantastic job of it as well, and if they've added these players to the squad that they already had last season without losing any of them, then I'd be worried. But they haven't. So with that in mind, I don't think they push past us in their squad development in any way. They've done a fantastic job nevertheless, but let's not blow it all out of proportion. Believe it or not, this is a Borussia Dortmund podcast, so let's get back to the most important part of why we're here. And let's dive into what we may look like going into the first game of the season against FC Köln. Starting with the goalkeeping positions, and Kobel is the outright and undisputed number 1 for us. His name is repeatedly coming up in the conversations for the captaincy, and that shows how important he is both on and off the field. Behind him is Alexander Meyer, who, when called upon last season, did a very good job of holding the fort between the sticks. Behind him is Marcel Lotka. The young 22-year-old doesn't seem to have been able to move Meyer as Gregor Kobel's number 2 as of yet, but he performed admirably for the BVB under-23s in the 3-leaguer last season. All in all, the goalkeeping positions are covered. They were never going to be an area looked at this off-season, and in that regard, we have last summer's recruitment to thank for that. Moving on to the back line, and in my opinion, fully fit and with everyone available, I think we'd be looking at Ryerson at right full-back, Süle and Schlotterbeck in the middle, and Ben Sebaini at left full-back. After that, Marius Wolf would be the cover for Ryerson, Mats Hummels would be the cover in the event of losing either Süle or Schlotterbeck, and if we look at potentially losing both Meunier and Mori this off-season, that would leave us needing another centre-back and another left-back for cover. There's been a lot of rumours about us being in the market for a right-sided defender, which I personally don't understand, as I feel we are short on the other side. Yet with the flexibility of Ryerson taken into consideration, they may not see him or Wolf as starters for the upcoming season. If that's the case, our best case scenario would see us bringing in another right-sided fullback of a starting calibre, with Wolf as backup, moving Ryerson as cover for Bensebaini, whilst also leaving Mats and possibly 19-year-old Namandi Collins from the under-23s if needed in the centre. The worst case scenario wouldn't be much different, keeping Ryerson as the starting right-sided fullback and then promoting Prince Anning as cover for Bensebaini, whilst Mats would again be the only first-team calibre cover in the centre of our defence. I personally think we need another centre-back and left-sided fullback bringing in. If not, I see Anning and Collins being used as understudies to their counterparts until they're called upon by Edin Terzic. Now onto the most talked about position or positions so far this off-season, and that is in the middle of the park. Let's assume that we're going into this new season with the same system as last year, and I would say that we'd already have our starters, as Emre Can is going to be the traditional number 6, Felix Nemecha will be taking up the number 8 role, with Julian Brandt occupying the number 10. Starting with Can, if he is to play anything like he did in the second half of last season, then there's no debate regarding this one. Behind him would be Salih Özcan. I like him, I know a lot of the fan base don't, but I think he's more than capable and showed this last season on multiple occasions. Moving on to Felix Nemecha, in terms of a player profile, he is very, very close to Jude Bellingham, in that he'll do everything, but not as strong. He's athletic enough to be that Swiss Army knife box-to-box player that we need, but just not quite at the level Jude would have done all of those things. We weren't going to be able to replace Jude like for like, and we knew that, but Felix is hopefully the closest to what Jude gave us in terms of physicality and technicality. The question I think the hierarchy needs to find the answer for is who is Felix's replacement or cover. They promoted Ollie Pohlmann from the under-23s, and if that's their only plan, then I don't think it's anywhere near good enough. We've seen ourselves linked with a host of names so far, but as of yet, nothing has been concrete after the supposed collapse of the Alvarez deal. The position is the one that needs immediate attention. If Felix is the first choice at the number 8 as we're suspecting, then we need another body as support. Moving on to the number 10, and again Julian Brandt is the no-brainer with the current options we have. If he can hit his form that he had pre-injury last season, then he'll be the man to link the midfield and the attack. Where in the squad does the cover for Brandt come from? Well, with the array of options we now have out wide, I see Marco Reus and Gio Reyna being the cover here. Both are injury prone, yes, but I'd hope that with Marco being able to fully focus on his game after vacating the captaincy, and Gio having a good pre-season, although he's already been injured on international duty, this is another position that, when fit, has ample quality and cover. The best case scenario for the midfield 3 is Can with Özcan as cover, Nemecha as the starter at the number 8, and at least one new face such as Hulmand from Lecce or Anton Stack from Mainz, and then Brandt as the starter with both Marco Reus and Gio Reyna as the other options for the number 10 role. A worst case scenario only really impacts the number 8 role in this situation, where Nemecha doesn't play, Ollie Pohlmann just won't cut it with his lack of experience and the pressures of first team football. So if we don't see any new faces coming in, I expect certain players being utilised in unfamiliar positions yet again this season. Now to the business end of the pitch, and surely this is the easiest yet. There aren't really any worst or best case scenarios here. We're in a fantastic position as Adeyemi, Haller and Malen currently pick themselves as the starting front 3. Behind them we have Bino Gittens, Mukoku and Julian Duranville. If we were to try and better it, we could maybe bring in a versatile attacker that could cover if Bino Gittens or Adeyemi's injury troubles return. But with the overload at the number 10, and any of Brandt, Reus or Reyna could be utilised in these positions too. It's the only area of the pitch I'm not that concerned about. In fact, after seeing the short cameo by Duranville in the last game of the season, I'm extremely excited at the potential our attack has at being even better than it was last season. With everything we've covered today, I hope it's a little clearer as to why we haven't gone out and bought 6 to 8 new players in the first few weeks of the transfer window. Yes, we lost 2 vital first team players in Rafa and Jude, and they've been replaced by Bensebaini and Nemecha. I'd like to see one more central defender and a versatile central midfielder at an absolute minimum, and possibly another left-sided fullback if I'm being greedy. After that, we're ready. We're ready to do it all again, but hopefully this time with a far better outcome. If you have managed to get this far in the show, then I'd like to say a huge thank you as always. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button if you want to support the show. You can become a Borussia Dortmund English member via the Patreon page, and this really does make a difference, so again, thank you. I'll put all of the links below, but for now, I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I'll be continuing the podcast throughout the off-season with news, transfers and everything BVB, and I'll see you all on the pages over the summer. Take care everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Echte Liebe podcast.